Okay, so now we're going to have a look at the final against Nightingale again. And yeah, the double Last Nightmare is not really what we want against this deck. The Kalim's follower is weak against Groundshaker, so this is quite an easy mulligan. I'd even consider keeping it against green, but against red, obviously it's an insta throwaway. And yeah, we don't. The hand that we get isn't much better. We basically just have to hope that he didn't have the Groundshaker from his opening hand, and we know that he mulliganed away. So I think it's quite likely that he didn't have Groundshaker in his opening hand. Obviously, I haven't actually played this Meteor deck, but I think he's played us enough to know that Groundshaker has a lot of decent targets in our deck, particularly the Kalim's followers and the Queen's favorites. So I think that along with it being a good early minion to collect Faeria, it can trade nicely. I suspect that he would have kept the Groundshaker if he had one in his opening hand. I mean, yeah, it comes out on turn 2 if he, maybe not just as a Faeria collector, but to like cancel out our potential Faeria collectors. Yeah, so I think it's obviously always kind of fine to just set out the Kalim's followers, because in this kind of control deck, there's no disadvantage. I'm not necessarily needing them for face damage, especially because I have them in my opening hand. So if I send them both out straight away, then I think that's too much Groundshaker value. But just sending out the one, I think, is pretty good. Because yeah, there's absolutely no downside, because they're certainly not going to be doing anything other than collect Faeria for at least the next 10 turns. So this is basically free, and potentially it could come to an additional 2, 3, 4 Faeria before he actually gets the Groundshaker out to deal with it. So yeah. The starting hand isn't exactly what we want, though. We want at least one big threat that we can kind of play more aggressively to kind of deal with his minions.
No Groundshaker yet for him. He will draw into one, obviously, but you might get unlucky. That is part of the nature of a card game.
Mm-hmm.
So he might be prepared to set up a Bomb Slinger to get rid of something as simple as a Kalim's follower.
Right, and I guess the question ends up being then, if you're Salugi, do you play both Kalim's followers? Like, do you still play the follower next turn even if you know your opponent could easily have a Groundshaker?
I don't think you play both of them, no. You wait one more turn, maybe. Here's the thing, though. You want to tease out the Groundshaker sooner or later. I think getting one Groundshaker out in exchange for 2 Kalim's followers, who've already paid for themselves in Faeria, is pretty good enough, because it will limit the amount of beneficial trades Nightingale can do later in the game, where he can surprise you with a Groundshaker and then trade away to remove a bigger threat that you have.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. So we do see the Kalim's follower here.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing to point out is that if Salugi did wait here, he'd be probably assuming that Nightingale is trying to mind game him, because I think at that point, if Nightingale did have a Groundshaker last turn, he probably would have played it. So that's another thing that Salugi might be assuming right now.
Yeah, I think I would expect him to play the Groundshaker on the one Kalim's follower. Well, I don't know, but I think I would probably play it just to deny Faeria, just to get some Faeria of my own. I don't think we really have a play here, so I think it's fine to just pass. Unless I draw
So
into
here
something.
Salugi has the option of setting up a Last Nightmare to deny Nightingale Faria. Not sure if it's worth it yet, but Nightingale doesn't actually have that many viable Last Nightmare targets aside from the Lord of Terror. He has the Ground Shakers, he has the Garradon, but I think that's pretty much it, isn't it?
I feel like there's something else. Um, that might be about it. Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, we didn't see any
Magnus.
barbarian ogres or anything like that out of there, so that could very easily be it.
And that might actually be a worthwhile opportunity to play the Last Nightmare here. Getting rid of the Lord of Terror, potentially moving in with both of the Kalims on both sides here. And Saluigi can do a bomb sling on one of the Kalim's followers, but that's not going to be a very nice trade for him.
Right, and even with a Wind Soldier, he'll be able to trade back pretty efficiently with it too.
Huh.
Okay, so we'll see what he ends up doing. He is making the desert, so this could very easily be the last nightmare. I'm a little bit surprised he didn't advance the Kalium's follower first to be able to play the desert on this space. So it looks like he's really concerned about the defensive land placement and keeping his opponent from getting in A deeper.
So, given that our opponent has 10 Faeria next turn, yeah, so he's got 11 Faeria next turn. If he puts down a red tile here, and then plays Garradon, plays Ground Shaker, plays, anything like that. Maybe Magnus, we saw. Then we basically just lose the game, I think, because we've just used up our last nightmare. And if you look at our hand, we can stall for one turn. But if he just, a Ground Shaker on this tile or a Garradon on this tile is just instant loss. Yeah, of course we see in his hand that, we know he doesn't have Ground Shaker. He wouldn't have had the opportunity to play Garradon before this turn, I don't think. So we don't necessarily know he doesn't have Garradon. But even if he has something like Magnus, then if he has Magnus, then that's still obviously also really bad for us. Just by our hand is so weak. I don't think we can afford to take the risk to just advance and make the well here, make the land here, because we do need to think defensively. And also notice that he can't yet get out the meteor. So maybe in the long term it's a little bit less good, but yeah, I did check to see whether or not he did have the meteor available that turn, and I know it's kind of more something that you want to kind of think about in the long game, but in the short, there's so many possibilities that we could just lose the short game. So let's say even though let's imagine we know he has no Ground Shaker, no Garradon and no Magnus. That means that there's 3 draws in his deck, and he has 24. There's 5 draws in his deck, and there's 24 cards in his hand. So he has a 5 in 24 chance to just win the game right there. That also means that, let's say he draws a card, and then, no, okay, so he can't draw a card, but he can just place his red land here, and if our draw, we only have a 1 in 12 chance to draw a second last nightmare, so he has a lot more opportunity to draw his threats than we do to draw our removal. So if we allow him to get this tile, then I think that's going to have a lot of bad repercussions in the late game. It's also worth considering that controlling this tile is a much better position to put down this wind soldier than, say, putting it here. So this wind soldier will be able to deal with, say, a bomb lobber that comes down here, if we just make prairie, or even the 2-3 with combat to gain 2 failure. This is much nicer positioning. I mean, yeah, I know that we can kind of reach it from here as well, but this also gives us the opportunity to come in here and kill off a failure collector as well. And because we have the wind soldier in hand, that's something that is included in our thinking, in our calculations. So I think on the whole, it's better to put the land here. But yeah, obviously we do need to start worrying about potential meteor in 2 turns. But it's not so bad right now.
But that's actually also surprising, considering Salugi probably knows by now that Nightingale has a meteor in his deck. And by placing his desert like this in a cluster, he's making such a beautiful meteor target for Nightingale, as opposed to putting one of the deserts next to the fairy wells.
Yeah, that's a good point. One other thing that's worth noting is, players aren't really used to playing around meteor either. So a lot of these things that we see as commentators, they're thinking so many more things in their mind. Oh wow, he's actually going to burn the firestorm just to deal with these 2 followers. What do you think of that? Do you think that's worth it to take out these followers?
I think it is worth it in the end, because you don't have any other way of dealing with them. You can't rely on drawing into a ground shaker. The ground shaker is ideal.
So yeah, this gives us a lot of information about what's in his hand. That there's no Garadan, no ground shakers. I wish we already knew that there were no ground shakers, but also knowing that there's no Garadan also kind of helps us. But with the hand that we actually have, this information is pretty meaningless. And now he can actually start to make prairies down here, forcing us to create defensive land positions, to purely to set him up for the meteor. So we're actually in a really bad position here. As it turns out, we did indeed draw the last nightmare. I think if we had this nightmare in hand, the last nightmare in hand already, it might actually be better to place this desert here. But we can't rely on drawing this, as it's only a 1 in 12 at that time. Or perhaps 2 in 12 if we draw. But we really don't want to be drawing at this stage in the game when we know he has Meteor. We want to be expanding. So right now our hand is looking really kind of the opposite of what we want it to be. We want it to be Windborne champions. We want much bigger stuff like the ground shakers. Ground shaker would be very nice here. Stuff like that. And even like it would even be a consideration to just drop a vampire for tempo on this side. It's not great, but we've not seen any of the, I think they're called firebombs. In 3 games against him, we didn't see a firebomb. So I think it's okay to just put a vampire down here for Fairy Collection and to just have something to advance forwards. If we had it in hand. But as it is, obviously there's nothing we can do, and we're really sad about that.
Is one damage and everything. That's perfect. But sometimes you have to make suboptimal play in order to deny your opponent advances when it comes to economy or land grabs. And here,
And yeah, I definitely agree that the Firestorm was correct. Um, we don't have that many great targets for Firestorm anyway, and generally we're playing on the counter. So, yeah, I think just using it to deny two Feria is basically, it's pretty good.
he's basically removing upwards to 2 or 4 Feria, depending on how long these Kalim's followers were going to survive. Because he didn't have a bomb slinger ready to deal with either of them. So I think that was actually a good play from Nightingale.
Okay. Fair enough. I can't say I really disagree with too much because, like you said, there's really no good way for him to be coming in here. That was a strange bug.
What happened there?
I think it might have just been turns passed back and forth very quickly somehow. I'm not exactly sure. It's fun. Um, but
Oh, Salugi doesn't really have anything to play, really.
right, but I don't think his favorite account changed. I think it was just a bug with the interface
okay.
saying whose turn it was, which is fine. And here we do see a ground shaker come out for Salugi instead. So this will let him deal with the Queen's favorite if he wants to. He can play the ground shaker and then play the Wind Soldier to be able to attack into it. But I think he's more likely to play the Devouring Plant here instead. Well, actually
You
scratch
could
that.
wait one more turn, actually, to lure that Queen's favorite in, and then play the Devouring Plant and lock it in place.
Yeah, but
Nightingale wouldn't be able to deal with it, and that would remove the protection shield, and then he could do a ground shaker. But that's a really slow trade, I admit.
Yeah, I misunderstood it. I thought that the land above the Queen's favorite belonged to Salugi. So the
Okay.
Devouring Plant play does not make as much sense, knowing that I was wrong.
So if we place the ground shaker here, it can't collect Feria. It can't really do anything, and it's also very bad against Meteor. Like, this is a good Meteor target. I guess it can trade here, but it's not great. And I guess we expect this to... if this moves up here, then it's fine. I suppose this may have been a reason to save a Kalim's follower, so we could just play it here, gather Feria, and pick up a land after the first one died. So that's definitely something that we can consider, but we do have this Windborn champion. So it's actually... Perhaps a better play would actually have been to use this Windborn champion, come down here, set up the red tile here, and then play Ground Shaker. And I think you would play it on this side. So it contends this 2-3. And then, of course, he uses Bomb Slinger. But yeah, I do like the I do like this play a lot more to run in with the Wind Soldier and then play the red tile here. It's just far better in my opinion. The only thing is, again, maybe we need to worry more about our defensive land positioning. So we do kind of block off him putting down something strong here. At this stage, though, we know that he doesn't have anything strong. And we do also have the Last Nightmare in hand. And we have 2 Devouring Plants. So we actually have a lot of stalls, so we could even just put Devouring Plants down here. And if he wants to, he can always just meteor away our lands anyway. So this is definitely the play. Okay.
So I don't really like luring in the queen's favorite like that. Ideally, you want to deny the favorite as best you can. So I think I still like the ground shaker wind soldier play.
So Luigi is going definitely for the value plays. The way I see it now, he's trying to wait for that underground brigand to move up one more tile. No, it turns out he did what he said.
I guess I have the benefit of seeing an extra game between these two compared to you.
Fair enough, fair enough. The underground brigand will move up anyway, though. Set up there to gather more Feria. And Saluigi can't really deal with it.
Oh,
He
but this
could build
Garadon
two
is...
planes, actually. Oh, there's a Garadon. There you go.
So he could play Garadon and plant this turn. Possibly even double plant. I'm not sure if that's overkill or not, though.
What you have to keep in mind, though, with double plant is that you're gonna kinda limit the amount of spaces you can summon your creatures on. Because I assume he would have to put the double plants on that desert in front of the Lord of Terror, and then on the mountain next to him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's now two tiles closest towards the opponent that he can no longer summon anything on.
I remember in the game I really liked double plant here because if they both live, then we get a really excellent ground shaker with these two. And this is why we set up these two lands, so we can just place ground shaker, Garudan. We get an excellent Garudan, killing a 2/2 and a 2/2. We deny him this his combat ability, and we can also just set up Garudan here, where he's going to directly damage the face. So, yeah, I really, really like the Devouring Plant set up for Garudan next turn. And the thing is, it is perhaps a bit of a tell that we do have the Garudan. Maybe one is sufficient, but we don't really have anything else, and we do kind of need... Yeah, we do need these... We want to use the plants, and this is probably the best value that they can get. So here's an interesting idea. So what if we played a plant here and plant here? And then this means that he can't play the Bombslinger here, because then it just dies to this. And I think the Bombslinger, a 4/2 has, like on board, has perhaps more value than the 2/6. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that he would Bombslinger if he knew that it was going to just instantly die. And I'm pretty sure he has no other way to deal with it in his deck than to Bombslinger it. So actually, yeah, I like that play more. Because you can't even move this anyway. So I guess this survives. Yeah, but then if we do this, then we can't play the Garudan anywhere aggressively, because this will survive and it'll be free to move. So yeah, it's not worth doing that. I think we just do what we do.
So we might just start with the plant then. No, he's going to double plant though.
He goes for it.
But he is going to wait and not summon the Garudan right away. And I like that play because this Lord of Terror isn't going to do anything with two plants next to it. So he gets to see how effective these plants are before he worries about whether or not he wants to play Garudan. In the meantime, it baits out this Bombslinger. So great play by Salugi there, I think.
Definitely.
So do we just play the Garudan? Yeah, why not? Why not? as I said, I don't think there's anything in his deck that can actually deal the damage that he needs to deal to this. So as we already talked about, we want to play in an aggressive position, and I really think this is probably the best position for it. So we don't think he can deal with this, particularly. Maybe he has like Firebomb, maybe he has I don't know, something with haste, and then he can play a land and then trades. I don't know. Yeah, so maybe if he had a haste trade and then bomb slinger here. But 99% of the time, Garadan in either of these positions will survive. I think we've seen enough of his deck to know that. But it's a kind of I mean, we can be really greedy and put the Queen's favorite here, and in all likelihood we should do that. But given that this is the final, we really want to win, and we would look really stupid if we'd forgotten something. Like, that was going through my mind. If there's something, like, if there's some really obvious play that I've just completely overlooked, and he gets to kill this, if he kills the plant and then trades into the Garadan, I both insta lose the game and look very stupid. So I think just having the Queen's favorite here as an additional layer of protection is good. I also like playing the Garadan here as opposed to here. So if we play Garadan here, then he has to... Well, for one thing, this Queen's favorite isn't actually doing anything, so we may as well play it here. Secondly, he has to actually build this red land here, and maybe he wants to play... Maybe he wants to build double land to block off us coming down here. So if he built double prairie, then our aggressive options going forward over the next 2 or 3 turns are limited somewhat. It maybe slows down us getting to his orb by 1 or 2 turns, which in a game where he has big removal like Garudan, he has Meteor, he has, you know, a lot of big stuff that can deal with our threats, then that's quite, you know, I think that that's important, that we get as much pressure on as quickly as possible. So maybe let's say he plays a red here, Bomb Lobber and Cypher's Wrath. We still have the potential for Prairie, and with that Prairie in mind, his Bomb Lobber has nowhere to go where it can escape a potential vampire. Or we could draw a Soul Drain. So there's actually 6 draws out of 19 on our deck, which would be able to deal with a Bomb Lobber that he'd bring out to deal with Garudan. Whereas if we just put Garudan, say here, he Bomb Lobbers here, and builds Prairie over here, it's a bit more difficult for us because we can't necessarily get... well, this land will be red. I guess we can still do that, but also this just looks like a really good area to attack. And I really think that we should go for it.
Now he could, and I think that he's just going to put a 3rd mountain right towards his opponent and just summon the Garden there, and then start going face aggressively.
And yeah, also because Garudan has charge 2, it makes no difference whether we... the other thing obviously is he can trade into Garudan with this. So yeah, this is obvious, a lot more obvious. Oh no, you can't because this is dead. So yeah, scratch that. But yeah, I still think it's better to put it here. Just force him into making lands that perhaps he doesn't want to make.
I feel like that it might be a good play, but I feel like there's just that edge of it being just a little bit too risky to summon it there. Because if Nightingale can somehow deal with that Devouring Plant, then he gets to trade his Lord of Terror into the Garden for free.
That is the risk. The question is how Luigi is willing to take the risk, because if it pays off, he is going to be so much ahead in the lead. Nightingale wouldn't be able to deal with his Garden. He could do a Bomb Slinger, Imperial Judge. That's a 10th area.
I think it is safe enough to play the Garden up there, because I can't think of anything in Nightingale's deck that would allow him to deal with that Devouring Plant that efficiently. He is going to go ahead and make the play too. And with following up with the Queen's Favorite, even if he does deal with that plant, now it's protecting the Garden as well.
Yeah.
So great play from Salugi there. At this point, if you're Nightingale, do you go ahead and use this Ogre Dance just to figure out where it's going to hit? Because at some point you need to gain the Favoria advantage that it is going to give you.
You might as well.
I guess technically we inadvertently play around him using Imperial Judge on his on this guy as well. I mean, yeah, it doesn't make a difference because we come down here anyway, but something to think about. Even if he just plays the Judge just to have something survive, we can just finish it off. So yeah, I think it's correct.
Essentially, Ogre Dance is kind of like Fairy Acceleration. If it lands on, for example, the Bomb Slinger, he could, let's see here. Well, it's essentially just a +1 Fairy gain. That's actually not that good. But he might get lucky. It's like a 25% chance. If it lands on the Garden, though. Or a Ground Shaker.
Okay, by drawing first, he does increase it to a 40% chance that it'll be a +2 Fairia. But I don't think he's going to take the risk. Yeah, okay, so if he doesn't take the risk at this point, then he can just play the Ground Shaker immediately, and that will be able to trade off for Gardon if Gardon goes aggressive. Okay.
And that is the safest play, I think.
Yeah, you can always take that risk on the Ogre Dance later on when you need the Favoria more.
Yeah, and this is very easy Last Nightmare for us. Because he only has one Fairia, so he's just never going to get back into the game. Especially with the deck as greedy as his. Yeah, just only getting 3 Fairia a turn just is not going to be good enough for him. So yeah, this is very easy. Soul Pact into Last Nightmare. There's not that much to be said about it. I guess we create a land first.
With this Last Nightmare in hand, though, I think that Salugi is probably just going to move to get aggressive as quickly as he possibly can here.
Let's see. He has a Last Nightmare in hand. He can't play that out, though. Oh, it actually can. Never mind.
Yep.
Yeah. I completely forgot the Soul Pact.
That's alright. It's an easy card to
Well.
get. Okay, and yeah, he's going to march his creatures up the conga line here, just all following Garadon. And Nightingale might... Man, this is a difficult situation to be in, because if you take the risk of this Ogre Dance, and you miss, then you're basically just screwed. And that was not a good hit at all. So,
And
yep.
he surrendered.
Okay.
Okay, good. So yeah, I think although we had quite a poor start, he also didn't draw into his Ground Shakers, which I think are pretty key in this matchup. And yeah, we got some really nice draws in the mid game, particularly the Ground Shaker, which I still think we should have played here. Would have been far more beneficial. But I think the play that actually won us the game was this double Devouring Plant, just setting up for the Ground Shaker, and setting up for Garadan. And actually, I think this matchup pretty much comes down to who gets the best Garadan, or who draws Garadan first. That's what it felt like anyway when I was playing it. Okay, so let's move on to the
So
second game.
Salugi does take game 1. So it'd be
Oh
really
yes, it's
interesting to see how
beyond
he
just
moves forward.
winning the current game. You have to plan ahead and occasionally make these sort of moves that will trick your.
There he goes. So the moment that all the spectators are ready, we will be able to start. Played 2 meteors and
So yeah, we should talk about the sideboarding decisions. So in game 2 of our round 4, like Swiss round 4, we saw a shimmering statue. I assume that's because Nightingale thought that I was playing a red yellow burn list. And in fact, it's just like pure red yellow control. So what I did in this game was I switched in the took out the Windborne champions, which are pretty slow to get out because you need 5 yellow tiles, which is really vulnerable against Meteor. And I put in the Scourge Flame Spectres, expecting that he doesn't run any heal. So if I get all 3 Spectres out, then that's that's 9 damage to the face. So if we have any kind of ball control, then they're going to be really helpful. And this is kind of one of the reasons why we didn't do any sideboarding the first time we played Nightingale, so as not to give away any information, and it kind of came in handy here. But more the reason that we did it was just the surprise factor. Because he hasn't seen them, he's not going to be playing around them. I guess he has a pretty good idea of what our deck is, so to throw in this kind of to just throw something new in that he doesn't expect, I think could have possibly had a very big impact on the game. And also because they're just better than Windborne Champion in this matchup. Because we're naturally going to be playing yellow and red tiles, whereas with the Windborne Champion, generally we get 3 or 4 tiles out and we have to wait until we get the 5th yellow tile.
there he goes. So the moment that all the spectators are ready, we will be able to start this next game. And here we
I'm
go.
ready again. I was just staring at the beautiful victory screen. I completely forgot.
Oh, it's an absolutely amazing screen. Alright. Oops. Almost marked the wrong score there again. Alright, and Nightmare Groundshaker is not the hand Salugi's going to be starting with, I don't think. And it does look like Nightingale does still want to keep in the meteors.
Yeah, so again we start with the double Nightmare. Groundshaker is... Double Groundshaker is really good in this matchup, but just the one, maybe not so great in the early game.
Seen before.
That could be a sideboard inclusion from Salugi.
Yeah, but I think it has to be sideboard inclusion at this point, just off the number of games that we've played. So I wonder if he didn't sideboard it in the other match because he didn't want Nightingale to know that he had it. It's again all these mind games and everything that could happen based on playing your opponent once when the game doesn't actually matter.
In the end, though, if you're playing a desert mountain deck, your opponent is kind of going to expect the Scourge Flame Spectre. Because, especially in a control deck, which Salugi is playing.
I'm not sure I agree with that. Like for the 6 Favria, it doesn't really do that much. It's only a 3/5 stats for 6 Favria. And it does have the haste, it has the mobility, it has all that stuff, but the big thing they usually play it for is the combat ability, the damage that it deals to your opponent. But in this deck, he doesn't really have a good way to take advantage of it. Normally, by the time he's hitting his opponent in the face, he has enough advantage to win the game. So that extra 6 damage or so that the Scourge Flame Spectre is likely to deal probably won't matter too much in the long run.
Personally, I love him as a way of dealing with the farmers. You can get rid of those Queen's favorites in conjunction with a Groundshaker, or a Bomb Slinger, or an Imperial Judge, if you know their opponent are running that sort of minion. Okay, but here we go. Salugi already has the Kalim Sky Prodigy out, and getting this out this early is actually really beneficial. He could go towards the middle of the board, and in 3 more turns, start hitting Nightingale. So now Nightingale is always going to have to be ready for that Kalim.
And with this Bomb Slinger and this Imperial Judge, he will have an answer for it as long as he has a Faeria.
And as long as he has lands next to the Kalim.
Mhm. Now, posturing with this Queen's Favorite here, it has to be a little bit confusing to Salugi because Kalim beats the Queen in a fight, or the Queen's Follower rather. Queen's Favorite, jeez. But I'm not sure. If you didn't have some other way to deal with Kalim in your hand, would you really be moving Queen's Favorite forward like this? That's got to be what Salugi is thinking.
Yeah, this is actually a very interesting play here because it almost looks like Nightingale is telling Salugi, I have a bomb sling in my hand. Because of
He wouldn't be able to deal with the Kalim last turn anyway, right? He'd come in, play the Queen's Favourite, and then he wouldn't have a land to play Bombslinger on. Actually, this was a case where I kind of didn't think hard enough, or maybe ended my turn too fast, because the intention was to play the Queen's Favourite here, because the Bombslinger could come down, and Queen's Favourite is a great answer to the Bombslinger, and it collects Faeria. So, yeah, the idea was simply play Queen's Favourite, and then he can't Bombslinger, so this will just get a nice trade. Obviously, it didn't work out that way, because I'm pretty sure this is where I
to
forgot.
attack with the Queen's Favorite, and then the bomb slinger dealing 4 damage.
But it's also fine because we do have Garadan in hand, so he'll bring the Bombslinger down, and we're just going to play Garadan to deal with it. So at this point, I guess it's probably beneficial to start building lands as aggressively as possible, so we can play this Garadan in a position where he can hit face in 2 turns.
Yep.
So I'm not sure why you did that.
Yep, and he just drops the plant and traps the Queen's Favorite right there, so it's not even going to be able to farm this turn. He might need to use the Bomb Slinger to deal with that plant instead.
Alternatively, he could go with the bomb slinger onto the Kalim, but then he would sacrifice the bomb slinger. And then I was thinking he could do Imperial Judge just to get rid of the Kalim. But that's not priority right now. The Kalim is still 2 turns away from hitting the face.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. He doesn't have any real reason to do that yet.
But it looks like he's doing it. Yeah, he's going for it.
It might be going towards the Devouring Plant still.
We'll see.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. He kept us in suspense for a little while there, but yeah, that frees up this Queen's Favorite and gives him a few more options. Unfortunately, he can't quite play the Garadan here, which is what he'd really love to play.
Now, Salugi, he's got to run away with the Kalim, of course. But the question is if you want to set up a Shaitan Vampire to get rid of the Bomb Slinger. Personally, I think that's an excellent play to make. You basically get a 7/6 that deals 2 damage, basically.
And yeah, for 7th Faeria, that's not too bad at all. And at the same time, this Kalim doesn't have to run away. He could still advance with it.
I think he's scared. He's scared of another Bomb Slinger now.
Is there a question that we do that? The Bombslinger dies to Garadan next turn anyway. If we just set up Prairie, then we gather an extra Faeria. I actually think this is a bit greedy. As in, it trades really badly with the 2/1. And it sets up a really tasty meteor target. So I'm not sure that I actually like this play so much. I mean, Bombslinger does feel like a natural predator for the vampire. I just think we have Garadan in hand anyway. Maybe it's not necessary, but I do think bringing Garadan out as early as possible would just be preferable. And also collecting this Feria, like just having this prairie over here where the Queen's Favorite can sit would be really nice. I don't know, I think it's really close actually. The thing that kind of makes me skeptical is that this trades so badly with Queen's Favorite. We've already seen Imperial Judges. I'm pretty sure that we saw Cypher's Wrath as well. We're extremely vulnerable to double Ground Shaker, say in 2 turns. I'm just not convinced about it. I mean, I think it's fine, it's just not ideal.
And yeah, for 7th area, that's not too bad at all. And at the same time, this Kaleem doesn't have to run away. He could still advance with it.
I think he's scared. He's scared of another bomb slinger now. Because
Okay.
the Queen's Favorite could have traded in, and then a second bomb slinger could have removed the Kaleem.
And Nightingale's probably perfectly happy to see this play, though, just getting the Kaleem away from there, because he doesn't have any of that. He doesn't have a good way to deal with it. The other thing that he really threatens is playing Magnus into being able to attack it. But this doesn't really stop that. Oh, but here comes
Wow.
the meteor. We should have talked about that one a little bit more before it happened, but yeah, that meteor is just absolutely wiping out everything that Salugi has just about. So
So we have 3 Feria advantage at this stage. We don't need to do anything, we just collect Feria. This should go here. And we should put a red tile here because we want to get maybe Ground Shaker, maybe... can we get Garadan next turn? Yes. So... yeah, we should play Kaleem here so we can attack next turn here. Maybe we play a yellow tile. Is a yellow tile better? Because if we play a yellow tile, when we come in here, we can start building yellow tiles here and here for the followers to come in. It's also better for the Scourged Flame Spectre, which obviously that advancement has been completely reset. There's not actually any rush to get out the Ground Shaker, so presumably he would come down and maybe trade here, and then we could then start thinking about getting a Ground Shaker down here or here. So yeah, it's just here, and then yeah, if we put a red tile down here though, then if he plays Bomb Slinger or something to block this off, then we can just straight up play Garadan. We never want to play Garadan back here. I think it's close, but there's just no benefit to going here instead of going here. So I think this is the spot that we want to take.
So Kalim, running away from an impending disaster like that is probably a good play.
And it just really limits the amount of lands or the direction he can build now, his lands, because there's only one land now on his side, and that's the one the Queen's favorite is standing on. So it's limited to basically around his core and then next to that one Feria pool.
hmm And additionally, it's limiting his plays a lot more too. He cannot play the Scourge Flame Spectre for a very long time now.
And he doesn't know if Nightingale has another meteor in hand. So you need to start playing around that hypothetical second meteor.
I don't like this placement by the Kalim though. I think he went in a little bit too far. I would have liked to see him stop one square short. Because
Yeah.
now if Nightingale plays the Ground Shaker somehow, then it would be able to trap in that Kalim.
Yeah.
I guess Salugi could have thought forward enough and not worried about that, but it's not just the Ground Shaker either. If it was something like a Crumbling Ogre, I think it's called. Crumbling,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Are
Then
you
he'd
thinking
be,
about the 6/6 that takes damage whenever you play a card?
yep, the 6/6 for 5. That would be able to chase down the Kalim too.
Yeah, so we could also run away. That's a very good point. So yeah, definitely this is the spot that we want to be sending the Kalim. There's just no benefit to playing it here. I mean, even if somehow, I can't think how, but if somehow this dies, then the Kalim can again collect this Failure. So yeah, it's definitely better here.
Crumbling Golem. There we go.
Yeah, I don't think that was the ideal movement for the Kalim. Definitely agree.
Yep.
But
Then,
now he can move on to that land and build a desert next to the opponent's face.
yeah, but then he can't attack his opponent's face, which is what you really want to do with Kalim.
I think you're gonna have to be more cautious here, though, because you're running at the risk of potentially losing all of your lands, the way things are going. And he goes ahead and do that.
Okay. Oh man, and he's just playing a mono red deck at this point, basically, just playing the Ground Shaker and getting really aggressive.
Well, he has no desert creatures or cards in his hand right now.
Mhm.
He might as well just go all for it.
Yep. Now Magnus is a huge problem right now. He's probably going to draw 2 free cards off it at this rate because he's nowhere near a Last Nightmare, even if he had one in his hand.
So trading both of these feels really bad, right? Again, this would have been so much easier if we just left the Kalim here, came in here. We'd have had 3 additional damage this turn, so it'd be at 16, and then another 8 with 2 followers in hand, and the Scourge Flame Spectre still to come down. So yeah, if we played the Kalim here, then we could probably just go face and completely ignore Magnus. Maybe not. Maybe we don't want to do that. But I definitely think that our play was correct here. So come back here, collect Feria, and then trade and play Garadan here. Unless we want to build a yellow tile. No, it's got to be just play Garadan. Nightingale will get 1 free card that way. This will be at 2 health. Garadan will... Oh, if we come here? Yeah, so come here, move here, trade, play a yellow, and then play Garadan here. That's better. Because we don't want to play additional red tiles. Idea being we try and get the Scourge Flame Spectre out as soon as possible. So we use this momentum to deal as much damage to the face as we can. If it's enough, great. If it's not, then we're building yellow tiles because we're fairly sure that he has no additional healing in his deck. So with no life gain in his deck, we just get out the Scourge Flame Spectres and they're just going to burn him to death. So yeah, this is the play.
And there's actually nothing else that Salugi can do. I mean, he could He actually has a trade in here. He could alternatively back up that Ground Shaker and move in with the Kalim to hit phase. But then you're giving your opponent the time to remove Kalim and the Ground Shaker. Oh,
I was about to say your other option is to move back with Kalim and then just still attack face with the Ground Shaker. Oh, he's actually going to move to defend. Okay, and the extra Fairy allows him to play the Gargadon. Okay. Okay, that's a really good play there by Salugi. The Gargadon just absolutely wiping his opponent's board.
Oh yeah, of course we can't actually make the yellow land because we had to gain Fairy on the wheel. But yeah, other than that, I think it's correct.
Because that doesn't draw him a second zero-cost card, because it's only in
Should also point out that we were it was extremely lucky to get Kalim out as early as we did. So we still had something which survived after his meteor. And also then to just draw all of the red cards that are in my deck when he decimated all the yellow lands that I'd built. Yeah, I feel like I played pretty well in general in this game, but I definitely drew well as well.
Combat that Magnus will trigger.
So if you showed a seasoned veteran Fairia player this board, they'd probably have no idea how it happened right away.
Yes. That's the thing though with Meteor. It is so rare actually on the ladder. You can't reliably play a Meteor deck very often because it will be doing pretty poorly against aggro decks, which a lot of people are playing. But in tournament settings, where you can kind of predict what your opponent will bring in, you can play it. And it will be very, very strong.
Now this Brigand coming down will be able to kind of bank up a little bit of Fairia for next turn. But this Ground Shaker will probably happily trade into it if Kalim can get in attack phase. He's threatening 9 damage and lethal the following turn at this point.
And he can set up another land next to the opponent's face. Maybe put down a Queen's Favorite, because that will actually be pretty hard for Nightingale to remove. So that's another 2 damage, hitting him potentially for 2 turns.
Sure, which threatens lethal even if the Ground Shaker comes in and attacks the Kalim. If my math is right. Yep, because...
Let's think about other plays. Do you see any other plays aside from that?
He's so limited on Fairia that I don't think he has too much else. He could play a Ground Shaker by taking a Fairia for the turn, but it looks like he's not going to. So now it's just a question of if he plays the Follower or the Queen's Favorite. Queen's Favorite is a little bit more resilient, so I think I like that play better.
Oh, there we go.
Alright. So this is threatening lethal. We'll see what Nightingale has in store. Wow. So all these cards are just lining up exactly wrong. Like this Firestorm doesn't kill anything. Imperial Judge isn't enough. Bomb Slinger isn't even enough to kill something here.
Now he could... Let's see here. He actually have to draw for a card here. There's nothing in his hand here that can save him. He can trade the Ground Shaker into the Kalim, but then the Queen's Favorite and the Garden will be hitting face, and actually kill him with that Kalim's Follower that Salugi has.
Yep, that's right. So it looks like Nightingale might make him have it, as it were. But he's able to play a creature here. Block this off, so he's not just dead.
Not just yet. Also, keep in mind that the Scourge Flame Spectre is ready in 2 more turns.
Yes, he is. Salugi's managing to recover maybe even a little bit faster than Nightingale was from that meteor. Nightingale's still not up to the lens that he was.
Last Nightmare, well, I guess it's not that important to draw. The only question is, do we trade? And I think it's fair to say that the answer is obviously no. We just go face. Definitely. We have the Follow in hand. We have, which is 2 extra damage. We have also the Scourge Flame Spectre. So just setting up a yellow land. Yeah, I guess he is a little bit better. And not even any need to play the Queen's favourite. I don't know what he could have, but there's no point. We just set up a land, save Feyria, so we can get out the Spectre if necessary, in case he finds a way to block this.
But does this keep Nightingale alive at this point then? I'm not sure how
I
he'd
think
come
it
back
does.
once he takes 8 damage here, because I think the Scourge Flame is just going to be able to take the game at some point.
I mean, there's no healing in Nightingale's deck.
Earlier in the game, he did bring in a Shimmering Statue.
Okay.
It might have been when he thought that the build was more like a vicious control that uses these Scourge Flame Specters and that sort of thing. And he has more information now, which might actually end up hurting him, because a Shimmering Statue would be a great card to draw here, I think. Assuming this plays out how we expect it to.
Yeah, I don't see any way for Nightingale to actually win here. That's the thing. He can maybe survive, but he can't really. He's still super far away from actually winning the game. He has to move more lands towards his opponent. That gives Salugi time to find lethal. It's a bit really tricky.
Yeah, okay. So I guess by playing the Queen's favourite, we force him to block on this side as well. So next turn we can just come in on this side and win. I guess if we didn't do that, then he could gain Feyria and Bombslinger here. I don't know. No, that wouldn't save him. Yeah, I think we win either way.
So moving that one ground shaker back and trading into the Queen's favorite, and then moving that.
One thing to note is we still have the Feyria for Scourge Flame Spectre next turn if this survives. It's going to be very difficult for him to kill all 3 of my guys, which he needs to do to stop that. So, yeah. Even in the worst case scenario, where we still have like 2 lethal possibilities, so yeah, it's fine.
Forward ground shaker and trading it into Garden, he can then tap for Feria and play Firestorm. So that would clear Salugi's board.
Yes, it would, and I think that's certainly the play here at this point, because I don't see another way for him to stay alive.
But at the same time, you're not actually moving towards victory.
Right, but I don't think he has a more... So often that line is used, when people are making safe plays as opposed to risky plays that could still win them the game. But I don't think there's any other play that he can possibly make that keeps him in the game at this point. So I think it's still the play that he has to make.
I mean, one risky play he could do is draw a card, hope it's a bargain card, have that land on a Firestorm, and then play the Firestorm.
But he won't be able to...
Wait.
It would have to be an Ogre Dance, which would only net him 1 more Feyria. So that doesn't quite work. He won't be able to draw here if he wants to play a 6-drop.
Okay, is there anything else he could draw into that could help him? There's no taunts in Nightingale's deck. Wait, there might be that Shimmering Statue.
Maybe. It's a question of whether or not he brought them in for this game. Okay, so he's actually going a completely different route here. Obviously, knowing Salugi's hand, it's not going to matter. But well played by both players here. I think Salugi is going to take it. He's going to use the Columns Follower just for style as opposed to the Scourge Flame.
As opposed to the Last Nightmare, I was thinking.
So kind of showing him he was dead on board still, but congratulations to Salugi for being the winner of the 4th Feyria.
Okay. So I definitely learned a lot from this series. I hope anyone watching this did as well. Let me know if there's any plays that I've just completely missed or anything that I did terribly in the actual game. I think that probably my play got better as I got on, but also I think my draws got better as I got on. And I'd also like to thank Curl Gaming for um, for running this tournament. It was a lot of fun, and for the casters who were very insightful, and I've learned a lot from. Okay, cool. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you later.